Before I start this video, I just want to say to the people who are sending stupid messages and death threats to Castorice's VA, what is wrong with you guys? Showcasing to the world that you were born with this smooth as a bowling ball brain is not cool anymore, dudes. Just stop it and go into therapy or something. Alright, onto the video. Oh, it looks like Hoyoverse is sticking to their guns and are going to officially release Star Rail's first ever global passives. Let's talk about this. The name's Leafy and welcome back to Let's Talk Slow About Games, Star Rail Edition. Round about now, everyone and their mothers of the Star Rail community would have heard the shot heard around the world, which is the confirmation that Castorice will indeed have a passive talent that can proc if you have her in your account. Not party, but account. And it's not just any old cute passive talent like, I don't know, maybe give the team a 2% speed boost at all time or whatever. Nope. Her passive makes it so that your characters essentially have the Battle Royale down mechanic. If one of your characters get down during the battle, they won't die immediately. Instead, they get like a pseudo-temporary res, and if they get healed or given a shield before they finish taking an action again, then they remain alive. Alright, so all in all, a pretty big load of bullshit to have as a character feature in a gacha game that never had one of these to begin with. Obviously, this caused the players to become irate, many of them citing that Star Rail devs have reached a new level of greed by implementing this sort of mechanic in a game that had never broken the rule of, if not in the party, then it do nothing. But okay, let's just imagine for a second that we are in a utopia where any and every change that Hoyo brings into this game is one that is actually for the betterment of our experience. So let's try to begin this discussion by trying to give this thing some form of justification. Some that I took literally from the devs themselves, some that I took from the players, and one that I will try to concoct from fuck all. So bear with me for the next couple of minutes, I'll eventually argue with myself. Right, so justification number one comes from the devs themselves, and their justification is that Castorice having this kind of ability just canonically makes sense if you consider the lore of the game.
毕竟侠蝶与死亡权柄息息相关，在战斗中，他也想让死亡的脚步稍作停留。
果然是最温柔的黄金翼。那感谢各位老师的分享。
And that's all they said about it. Literally. For something that players have been wanting to prevent, they really just glossed over it like they were just adding another preservation res mechanic. Here's a possibly game-changing mechanic that we just added in the game. Just treat it like we're giving you another 30 stellar Jades code and have fun with it. I mean, okay then, you know what? Sure. I like a little bit of a lore nod in the character's kit, especially when it plays a deeper reference to what the character is written as in the game. I can sort of get behind that as a lore enjoyer myself. On to justification number two. And this one I'm gonna compile from the myriad of comments I've seen from multiple Star Rail community platforms bar X because, well, screw X. The comments range from, okay, well, it's just a revive, it's nothing new. Bai Lu and Jeopardized has this feature and an E2 Fushen also has this, so it's not even that strong of a passive to have. Plus, this doesn't make Castorice a must-pull of a character. Her team requirements are still rather costly, and while she does deal good damage, there's a lot of things you have to do to circumvent her playstyle. Just because she looks good for the meta doesn't mean you must pull for her. Still prioritize pulling for the characters you like. No one is forcing you to pull anyone. Of course, there's also that argument where people say, if you die in this game, you just suck at it lol. People who properly play this game will barely ever have to see this global passive proc. Which, I mean, you know, between people telling others to don't be a meta slave but also telling them that this game is too easy if you play it properly, I don't even know which part of the spectrum am I supposed to take seriously, but, you know, we'll just sort of take in their comments for now. And for me, my own sense of justification can only be from the fact that it only procs once every battle. And that realistically, from my experience at least, if you were to start dying in this game, chances are that enemy will end up wiping your team eventually anyways, since either your strategy is wrong or you were just too weak to go against that enemy in the first place. So in a way, I guess their whole Castorice would want to delay the embrace of death shtick might end up actually having some proper merit to it. However, that's where our bullshit justification round ends, and it's time for us to actually give this feature the lay of it. And for those of you who just can't seem to understand the problem with having this kind of feature in the game, let me just sort of try to make sense of what people's concerns truly are. The biggest issue that people have with this feature is not necessarily because, oh, it's a free res from out of nowhere. and it's unfair to those who were not planning to pull for her in the first place. While, of course, those two factors are somewhat of an issue in its own rights, people are more troubled by the precedence that Hoyoverse is setting by letting this kind of feature exist in the game. Think about it, since we now actually have a global passive readily available without us having to sacrifice a slot in the team to use that passive, who's to say that Hoyoverse won't then just absolutely abuse this notion and use the existence of Castorice's global passive as a justification to then base a lot of the future character's values through the means of a global passive instead? What if they decided to make a character have a global passive that, I don't know, increases crit rate or crit damage just by having that character in your account? Or not make it so that they have a significant boost of speed, or just a straight up 30% stat boost on everything? There is no telling what it is that they can do with stuff like that. They're already adding one of the pinnacle abilities that a sustain can have on its own on a DPS character no less, instead of it actually being on a sustain to start with, so people just have every right to be extremely wary of what the devs might do next. Would they be putting a 25% DOT damage bonus passive on a shielder? Would they add a 50% shield strength bonus on a harmony character? 30% damage reduction on a DPS? We don't actually know. The precedence that Castorice's global passive sets is not something that players can take lightly. And look, I get it, some of you actually still have the optimism to think, well, have trust on Hoyo to not add that kind of global passive on another character and just believe that it is a one-time thing for Castorice. And considering how they are handling the chaos of Genshin's English VA scene, check out my video if you want to know more, I admittedly have some inclination to want to believe this to be the case. But unfortunately, trust is in very short supply these days, and that also includes HSR players' trust on Hoyo to not do something that the players have long majorly discussed to not want to have in the game. Especially now that they have promoted her on the livestream and has confirmed that the global passive is a feature that is probably staying, it really should be the chance for Hoyo to wake the fuck up and see that barely anyone wants this feature to exist as it is. Or at the very least, realize that there are a ton of ways, a ton of minuscule changes might I add, that could make it so that this feature is a whole lot more acceptable. Realistically, I don't think anyone actually cares that Castorice has a res mechanic despite being a DPS. It's just that the basic consequences of wanting to use that sort of mechanic in your team has always been the simple fact that the character itself has to be in the team. This is an unwritten rule that Hoyo themselves have applied in all of their current mainstream gacha games. I kinda know that Honkai Impact 3rd have minute global passive through Divine Keys and Dorm stuff, meanwhile both Genshin and Zenless has stayed away from making this sort of feature being a thing in their games. It's so ironic when people used to say, Genshin could never. Well, in this case, I sure fucking hope it could never. We don't want this to be a feature anywhere else ever. Having this global passive is the same shtick as having Barbara's C6 effect without even having her in the party. Imagine how strong rezzing like this would be in Genshin when you don't even have to sacrifice a team slot. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what sort of a passive a character is supposed to have. If you can't find a way to fit that character in the team to begin with, then you'd have to forgo having it. That's the whole thought process around team building, weighing which roles and skill set we really need more in the team and making our teams work with the usable options. Sure, a lot of us probably would have loved to have played Bailu just for her res, especially if you have E6 and you have two of them. But considering the fact that she is usually never the #1 choice for any type of playstyle in the current scene of the game, plus running 2 sustains these days is just something that only people who are paranoid of even getting tickled by the enemy would even consider doing, the lot of us just kinda accepts that her res would just remain something that she can do in a very niche situation. Now, if we do pull for Castorice, it just eliminates that dilemma. You have a free res anywhere, and it just sort of makes the whole process of figuring out what's best for your team just feel a whole lot more hollow. You can now always go into a battle with any team, even ones without her, all while thinking, I have one free pass if someone dies once, so just go YOLO. Or I guess, in this case, it wouldn't be YOLO. Change suggestions, number 1 is of course very simple. Just change the passive to only proc if she's in the team. That's what literally everyone else was thinking. It should have been that way from the beginning, and there are all the right reasons for Hoyo to only have it be this way. Sure, it's already slightly funny for a DPS to have that kind of passive, but it is certainly a whole lot less jarring and would completely eliminate that fuck you feeling to the players to only apply it if the character is within the team as it had always been. For me, the only way that Hoyo can keep this passive remain a global thing is to make sure to give it some very specific restrictions. Like, okay, yeah, she can still have it as a global passive, but have it be disabled for endgame stages such as MOC and Pure Fiction. I guarantee that no one would even bat an eye if it were to only take effect in overworld settings or in simulated universe and divergent universe settings, since there are a dozen ways for you to get some res mechanics in those game modes without the need of a character passive anyway. It'll just be a neat feature to have as an afterthought. Or you can even go further to make it more specific, like maybe on top of the endgame restrictions, it could only proc in Amphorius-based battle settings, such as the changes we see in Divergent Universe rounds between those that are Amphorius teams with those that belong to other regions. Or you can even make it so that the passive only procs on the Trailblazer, because if the dev's excuse is that it is canonically accurate for Castorice to have this sort of ability, then why not only extend it to characters that would make sense for her to revive? Like, why would Castorice randomly revive Bellabox's equivalent of non-terrorist Klee in battle? What's the lore justification to that? If lore justification is all that they have, then shouldn't we be able to summon the Lawfu fleet once in any battle we want, since we do have that Jade Abacus that Jing Yuan gave to us? And judging by the sheer size of it that we saw through Enna's dream, wouldn't that mean that instead of Nikador one-shotting us, we can be the one to nuke it instead? Okay, I should stop talking. Don't want to give him too many ideas. Anyway, the point is, it's less that people are really worried about the passive itself, because quite frankly, it's nothing too special and it's nothing that we haven't seen in the game. But it is the implications that might come with having a feature such as a global passive that really raises some concerns. And since the solution to circumvent it all is so simple, people have every right to wonder if Hoyo really are going to stick to their guns for this thing. Of course, as things stands, it seems unlikely that things are gonna change, because they've already announced it in the stream. Very casually so, might I add. So I can only shrug and hope that some people's optimism isn't misplaced, and that Hoyo wouldn't exactly make this a mainstay occurrence. There's merit to this hope considering that half of the teased Amphorius 5-stars are out already with only one of them having it. And if Hoyo does keep this out of other characters, then it's fair dues to them. But I'd still rather play this game without having that thought of, what if they do another Castorice constantly nagging at the back of my head? Look, I get that she's supposed to be the Firefly of Amphorius, and bundle that up with her being the release character during the 2-year anniversary period, Hoyo would have wanted to do something special for her kit and character, but a global passive is just way too much of a jarring feature. She already has a decent backstory, great design, insane animations, and from what I've seen so far, a relatively serviceable kit. Having a revived normal passive on top of it would have already been more than what I would ask for. I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and say that I fully don't like seeing the attention they are giving to her, cause at the end of the day, I'm still a waifu puller. But there just comes to a point where even someone like me would have to go, wait a minute! And that's about all I have for this video. All I'm gonna say to wrap it up is for us to just hope that Hoyo can actually consider those little changes that I proposed earlier, because literally having any one of them would just make 3.2 sound like a much better patch. Thank you for watching. Hope it's been educational, and do feel free to leave some thoughts in the comments below. Until the next video, the name's Leafy, and I'll see you all next time. Sayonara.